Have you ever received really good news and then earth-shattering news at the same time? Well, today we're going to look at a woman in the New Testament, and this is exactly what happened to her. So stay tuned. Welcome to my channel. If this is your first time visiting my channel, I want to encourage you to pause this video and to watch the video entitled My Testimony. This will give you a glimpse into the traumatic experience that entered my life and really changed the course of my life. If you are a regular class attender, welcome back. I'm so glad that you are here. And let's sharpen our swords together as we dive deep in the scriptures. We're going to be looking at an individual in the New Testament. Her name is Elizabeth. And we are going to shine the spotlight on her because her life may have gone unnoticed, unrecognized by some. And I'm going to explain that in just a second. She is actually the cousin of Mary, and she is the mother of John the Baptist. And we talked about John the Baptist last week. And this encounter between Elizabeth and Mary is found in Luke chapter 1. Now, we just finished up celebrating the Christmas season, and we celebrate the birth of Jesus. And we also talk about Mary and Joseph. But what we do not talk about are the supporting characters that really supported Mary and Joseph in this endeavor. And Mary was going through a time in which she was going to be given birth to Jesus. And she was a virgin, and this pregnancy was going to be not going to be easy for her in every way imaginable. And she actually goes and visits Elizabeth with this news. But before we talk about the encounter between Elizabeth and her cousin Mary, I want to talk to you about Elizabeth and the state that she was in at this time when she receives this surprise visit from Mary. Elizabeth and her husband, Zacharias, had been praying for a very long time that, that she would have a baby. They had never had children, and furthermore, she was beyond childbearing age. And talking about people who are persevering prayer warriors, it would be Elizabeth and Zacharias. I don't think a lot of us, when we start praying for something, that we keep praying for years and years and years and keep praying that it's going to happen, because sometimes we lose faith and we don't stick with it. But Zacharias and Elizabeth were not like that. They kept persevering. And one day, Zacharias is a priest, and he is in the temple, and he receives this visit from an angel, Gabriel. And so after this visit, he comes home And Zacharias has some wonderful news to tell his wife, Elizabeth, that they are going to have a child, that Elizabeth is going to have a baby. But you know what? He wasn't able to express this news like he normally does, through voice. He has to get a writing table and he has to write out what is going to happen to her. I can't imagine how Elizabeth was feeling. She receives this answer to a long-awaited prayer request, a prayer request that she sticks to day in and day out for years, and she finally gets an answer. But the answer comes in a very different method than she would have ever anticipated. Her husband is now disabled. He cannot talk. She is having to help him maneuver his life. This shock, their life is changed in an instant. Beyond that, Elizabeth, the Bible says that Elizabeth hid herself for 5 months. You know, she was pregnant. She was beyond childbearing age. People would not understand it. And so she hid herself. She had this wonderful news, and she couldn't even tell anybody. So here she is, living a very lonely life for 5 months. She can't communicate with her husband like usual. And she is going about her new life in a very different way than what she's used to living her life. But one day, she receives a visit, a surprise visit from her cousin Mary. You know, Mary actually ends up staying there for 3 months. And with a 3-month visit, we are given a snippet of that visit. And the snippet of the visit that we are given is what happens at the very beginning when Mary comes to her house and greets her in Zacharias. With this visit, we can tell a lot about the person of Elizabeth. We can tell a lot about her relationship with her special cousin, Mary. There are 3 things about Elizabeth that really stands out in this encounter, this first encounter that she has with Mary. The first thing about this encounter is you can tell that Elizabeth's relationship with Mary is very authentic. As soon as Mary shows up and greets her, the Bible says that the baby jumped in her womb, talking about baby John, jumped for joy inside Elizabeth's womb. And Elizabeth actually shares this with Mary too. So it's something that she felt, but it's actually something that she shared with Mary. And this shows that, you know, her words were not just lip service, that she was truly authentic with Mary and seeing her for the first time. The second thing about Elizabeth's relationship with Mary is that it's an emotional relationship. You know, we love to share the highs and the lows with our friends, with our cousins. And they had this special cousin bond. As soon as Mary arrives, the Bible says, and she, talking about Elizabeth, spake out with a loud voice. And she said this, "Blessed art thou among women, and blessed is the fruit of thy womb." So she already knew that Mary was pregnant. I don't know how she knew this, but she was very excited for Mary and very excited to see her. The third aspect of this encounter, this relationship, special relationship between Elizabeth and Mary, is that it shows how selfless Elizabeth is in this relationship. This encounter between Elizabeth and Mary is all about Mary. You know, Elizabeth was going through a very lonely time. And, you know, she really would love to be the first one to express, "You won't believe what happened to Zacharias. You know, you won't believe about this." I mean, all this stuff. But she is actually Mary's sounding board. There are some verses that Elizabeth shares with Mary at the very beginning, but the bulk of this chapter, the bulk of this relationship, the bulk of this encounter is Mary's excitement about what is happening to her, that she is giving birth to the Messiah. And Elizabeth is so selfless in this encounter. So as we are going through this study of In the Shadows But Happy, and we're looking at the experts in how to battle jealousy, we can look at Elizabeth, and she could have been jealous in a couple of areas regarding Mary's life. First of all, she could have been jealous that she was not giving birth to Messiah. Instead, it was Mary. Second of all, she could have been jealous that Mary's encounter with the angel didn't leave her husband disabled. Those two areas, Elizabeth could have allowed jealousy and envy to take root in her life. So how was she able to battle jealousy? When we fall into the enemy's trap of comparisons, this can really be a time in which we are so bogged down with life comparisons that we really miss the help that God sends us. The special, unique help that He sends. So what do I mean by that? Well, you have to remember that Elizabeth and Mary were going through a similar situation. They were both experiencing pregnancies that would be misunderstood by the masses. And so God did not send a community of people around them to support them in this change. He sent them to each other. That is why the angel Gabriel appears to Mary and tells her about her cousin Elizabeth. Because Mary knew then that she would have someone that she could go through this very different change with, this very lonely change. And so when we start looking at life comparisons, the enemy can really have our joy taken away. It can keep us from receiving and experiencing special help that God sends in our lives. Let us all look to this encounter with Elizabeth and how she battled jealousy. Her authentic, emotional, selfless acts in this relationship that she shows towards Mary is awesome. That is my spiritual food for you to munch on the rest of the week. I can't wait to see you next week.